She was abandoned while pregnant and left with nothing, until a millionaire offered her a strange deal: care for his paralyzed son in exchange for shelter. But what she uncovered inside that mansion would change all their lives forever. What secret was the family hiding behind those quiet walls? The rain drummed steadily against the window pane as Emily Carter sat motionless in a dimly lit room above a noisy diner in Hudsonville, New York. She was 6 months pregnant, abandoned, broke, and grasping at the last strands of hope she had left. The father of her baby, David Miller, had vanished the moment she told him she was expecting. Now all she had was a suitcase, a nursing degree she hadn't been able to use in months, and a folded newspaper with a job listing circled in red. Live-in caregiver wanted. Full-time. Competitive salary. Room and board included. Experience with teens required. Emily reread it for the 5th time, her fingers trembling as she dialed the number. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, and gave nothing away. You'll meet with Mr. Richard Bennett this afternoon at Riverside Manor. Be prompt. Riverside Manor was a towering stone estate nestled on the edge of the Hudson River, haunting and majestic, like something out of a forgotten fairy tale. As the cab pulled up, Emily took a deep breath. She adjusted the borrowed blazer, stretched awkwardly over her belly, stepped out into the drizzle, and rang the heavy brass bell. The door creaked open to reveal Ms. Margaret, a stern-faced woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Come in, she said, nodding kindly. Mr. Bennett is expecting you. Emily was led through long, silent corridors lined with portraits that watched her every step. In a wood-paneled library that smelled of leather and smoke, a tall man stood by the fireplace. He turned. Richard Bennett was in his early 40s. Salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, green eyes that held a sadness so deep it made Emily pause. He extended his hand. I'm Richard. Please sit. Their conversation flowed more easily than she expected. Emily spoke about her background, her volunteer work at a pediatric ward, and her current situation. Richard listened, his eyes flicking briefly to her belly, but never asking. Finally, he said, The position is for my son, Jake. He's 15. 8 months ago, he was in an accident, and he's been in a wheelchair ever since. Before Emily could ask, Miss Margaret added softly, He's been difficult. You'd be the 4th caregiver in 3 months. Emily swallowed hard, the weight of reality settling on her shoulders. But there was something else, too. Something unspoken between these walls, grief, guilt, secrets. Can I meet him? She asked, surprising even herself. Richard nodded. Now, if you're ready. They took a private elevator to the 2nd floor. The air grew heavier with each passing moment. Outside one door, faint sounds of a video game drifted through. Richard knocked. Jake. No reply. He opened the door. Emily stepped into what looked like a teenager's command center. Flat screens, high-end speakers, gaming consoles everywhere. And there, in the middle of it all, sat Jake Bennett. His hair was as dark as his father's. His green eyes, icy, piercing, furious. He didn't even blink. Another one, he scoffed. How long do you think this one will last, Dad? A week 1, I bet. Emily felt the baby move, as if urging her to stand tall. She took a step forward, unshaken. Hi, Jake. I'm Emily, she said, locking eyes with him. And I think you're going to lose that bet. For the next few days, Emily lived under siege. Jake ignored her during meals, refused his physical therapy, and slammed doors as punctuation to every argument. Richard kept his distance, watching from the shadows like a man afraid of causing more damage. Ms. Margaret watched with folded arms and cautious hope, but Emily didn't break. Each morning, she pushed open the curtains in Jake's room and said, Good morning, sunshine. No matter how much he glared, she spoke gently, even when his words were cutting. She stayed. One morning, Jake snapped. You really think you're going to fix me? News flash. I'm not your little charity case. Emily sat across from him on the floor, belly swollen, eyes level. I'm not here to fix you, she said. I'm here to care. That's different. For the first time, Jake didn't have a comeback. The next morning during breakfast, he surprised everyone. Is it a boy or a girl? He asked. His voice low but clear. Emily smiled instinctively, placing a hand over her belly. I don't know yet. Thought I'd be surprised. Jake nodded, then added. What about the dad? Gone, Emily said quietly. He chose not to be part of the story. But that's okay. Some people show up to teach you a lesson, and then they leave. Jake was quiet for a long time. Finally, he whispered, Like my mom. Everyone froze. Richard's fork clinked against his plate. Miss Margaret looked away. Emily knew she'd touched something sacred. She hadn't been told much, only that Jake's mother had left. But in that moment, something shifted. That afternoon, Jake didn't resist his physical therapy. When Emily helped him stretch his legs, he asked, "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Stay happy after everything." She looked at him with a bittersweet smile. Because sometimes life doesn't give you what you want, but it gives you what you need. Jake studied her, then nodded. He didn't say more, but his eyes, those intense green eyes, held something new. Not anger, but hope. And outside the room, Richard stood silently in the hallway, unseen. For the first time in months, a flicker of light cracked through his carefully constructed armor. He wasn't just watching his son heal. He was watching Emily breathe life into the house again. What would you do if you were in Emily's shoes, alone, pregnant, and offered a job inside a mansion full of secrets? The days that followed were anything but quiet. Emily had expected challenges, resistance, coldness, maybe even cruelty. But what she didn't expect was the haunting silence that hung in the house like thick fog. Every marble hallway echoed with ghosts of the past. Every closed door whispered secrets she wasn't allowed to ask about. Jake didn't speak to her for 3 days straight. He wasn't rude, just absent, not physically but emotionally. He ignored her presence like she was furniture. A shadow on the wall. During meals, he would stare past her. During physical therapy, he would refuse to engage. Once, when she asked him what music he liked, he replied, "Whatever doesn't involve you talking." She almost cried that night. Almost. But she didn't. Instead, she sat by herself in the kitchen, whispering to her belly, "We're okay. We're okay." Then something shifted. It happened on a rainy afternoon. Emily had just come back from town, soaked from a sudden downpour, carrying 2 warm apple pies. One for the staff, one for Jake. She didn't even know if he liked apple pie, but she baked it anyway. She knocked gently on his door, expecting the usual silence. Instead, he opened it. He stared at the pie, then at her dripping wet hair. "You look like a wet raccoon," he muttered. She couldn't help but laugh. "Well, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me today." For the first time, his lips twitched upward. Not quite a smile, but close. He took the pie and closed the door. But the next day, something unexpected happened. He opened it for her. Not much was said, but she was allowed inside his world. She sat in his room while he played video games, read books, or sketched in a tattered notebook. He didn't talk, but he didn't ask her to leave. That alone felt like progress. It was Regina, the head housekeeper, who noticed first. "He let you in?" she asked, nearly dropping a tray of clean linens. Emily nodded slowly. "Is that unusual?" Regina stared at her like she was seeing a ghost. "Miss, that boy hasn't let anyone into that room since the accident. Not even his father." That night, Emily lay awake, her hand resting over the gentle curve of her belly. She wasn't sure what was changing, but something was. Days turned into weeks. Jake started joining her in the garden for therapy sessions, though he'd still grumble. He'd sarcastically rate her physical therapy techniques like a food critic. 2 out of 10. Needs more pep. But there were moments, brief, fragile moments, when he dropped the act. Like when he asked her if the baby kicked. "Yes," she said. "All the time." "Can I feel?" he asked, avoiding her eyes. She guided his hand gently to her stomach. When he felt the soft nudge beneath her skin, he froze. "What?" She smiled. "He likes you." "How do you know it's a he?" "I don't, but I feel like he's going to be trouble." Jake didn't laugh, but he didn't pull his hand away either. And in the silence, something unspoken passed between them. Not romance. Not family. Something stranger, something more powerful. Recognition. He wasn't the only broken soul in the house. One evening, while Emily was folding laundry in the staff quarters, she found an old photo buried between sheets. A young woman holding baby Jake in her arms. Her eyes were soft but haunted. Her smile seemed forced, almost frightened. On the back of the photo, Clara Summer 09. She went to Regina. Who was Clara? Regina paused, hesitant. That was Jake's mother. Where is she now? She left when Jake was 3. Walked out the door and never came back. Left no note, no warning. Some people say it was postpartum depression. Others say she just couldn't handle the life here. Mr. Walker never talks about her. Jake pretends she doesn't exist. Emily looked down at the photo again. That woman's eyes. They looked familiar. She didn't bring it up to Jake, but later that night, he surprised her. "I saw you holding that photo," he said without looking up from his sketch pad. She froze. "I used to think she died," he continued, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. That was easier than the truth. Emily sat beside him, unsure what to say. She didn't even say goodbye. One day she was putting honey in my oatmeal. Next day she was gone. I'm so sorry, Jake. He looked at her for a long moment. You're not her. You're still here. Her throat tightened. I'm not going anywhere. The words came out before she even realized what they meant. Later that week, while watching TV in the living room, Jake turned to her. So, do you have a name picked out for the baby? No, she smiled. Got any suggestions? He pretended to think hard. How about Thor or Anakin? She raised an eyebrow. So, you want me to give birth to a superhero or a Sith Lord? I'm just saying, if he's going to have to deal with this family, he better have powers. She laughed harder than she had in months. And Jake, for the first time, laughed with her. But just when it felt like things were finally settling, the doorbell rang. Emily answered it, thinking it was another delivery. Instead, standing in the rain-soaked doorway was a man in a tailored suit. Slick hair. Smug grin. Eyes that once made her trust too easily. It was Ben, the baby's father. He looked her up and down. Then his eyes flicked to her belly. We need to talk, he said coldly. And just like that, the past came crashing in. Let me ask you something. If your past knocked on the door just when your future was starting to bloom, would you let it in, or would you slam it shut forever? Ben's sudden reappearance hit Emily like a cold wave. He stood there on the porch, rain dripping from the brim of his expensive coat, wearing that same smug confidence she once mistook for charm. For a moment, she said nothing. Her heart was pounding so loudly in her chest, she could barely hear his voice. Nice place you've got, Ben said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His eyes scanned the high ceilings, the polished floors, the subtle signs of wealth. Didn't realize being a nanny paid this well. I'm not just a nanny, she said firmly, her voice low. I'm a licensed nurse, and I'm here because I earned the right to be. Ben scoffed. Sure. And I'm just here for a friendly visit. She crossed her arms over her belly, already protective. What do you want, Ben? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I want what's mine. My child. I have a right to be involved. You had that right the day I told you I was pregnant, and you disappeared. I wasn't ready then, he said casually like. They were talking about dinner plans. But I am now. Emily stepped back, shaking her head. No, you don't get to walk in here months later and play the role of a father. This baby doesn't even know you. And I don't want him to. Their voices, though hushed, had drawn attention. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs in his wheelchair, his eyes narrowed as he scanned the scene. Who is this guy? He asked, his voice sharp. Ben glanced up at him. The father. Jake rolled a few inches forward. The hell you are? Ben gave a dry laugh. Kids, stay out of it. This is grown-up business. Jake didn't flinch. This grown-up business? Yeah, I've been here. I've watched her throw up every morning. I've seen her cry in the middle of the night, thinking you might come back and hurt her again. I was here when you weren't. That makes me more of a brother to this baby than you'll ever be a father. Ben's jaw tightened. You're just some spoiled kid in a chair. Jake didn't even blink. And you're a coward who walked away, so don't come in here pretending you're something else. Before Ben could fire back, another presence filled the room. Nathan Walker, Jake's father, Emily's employer, calm, measured, but with a steel edge in his voice. I suggest you leave now. Ben turned to him, trying to regain his composure. Look, I'm not trying to start trouble. I just think I deserve to be part of the decision-making, and I'm prepared to go to court if I have to. Nathan stepped forward, eyes locked on him. You abandoned her. There's documented evidence of your neglect, and the law won't favor you. But more than that, this child is loved here. Protected, wanted. Something you failed to be. Ben's mouth opened like he was about to argue. But then he saw the determination on all their faces. Emily, her eyes blazing with defiance. Jake still in his chair, but unshakable. Nathan standing like a wall of stone. He knew he'd lost. I'll have my lawyer reach out, he muttered, turning on his heel and slamming the door behind him. The silence left behind felt almost sacred. Emily exhaled slowly. I'm sorry, she whispered, sinking onto the nearest couch. You have nothing to be sorry for, Nathan said. You've carried this alone long enough. Not anymore. A week later, Emily stood in front of the judge with Nathan by her side. Ben had indeed filed for visitation rights, but it was quickly dismissed. His sudden involvement, combined with overwhelming evidence of neglect and abandonment, gave the court no reason to entertain his petition. In a moment of rare clarity, Ben even signed a paper relinquishing all parental rights. It was done. Official. Legal. On the way home from the courthouse, Nathan took Emily's hand. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "What's this?" He handed it to her. Inside was a legal document, a petition for shared guardianship. Not just for the baby, but for Jake. He wanted her to be an official co-guardian, legally recognized as part of their family. Emily's throat tightened. "Nathan, why?" "Because you already are," he said softly. "You've healed this house in ways I didn't know were possible. You gave Jake back a reason to hope. And you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." She smiled through tears. "You're not proposing, are you?" Nathan laughed. "Not yet, but I am saying you belong here if you want to." Jake, listening from the back seat, chimed in. "Just say yes already. We're all tired of the suspense." A month later, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Miles, after the one she had traveled to find a new life and the miles she had gone to protect him. Jake held his little brother with both hands, stronger now from therapy. He whispered to him, "You're lucky, you know. You've got a mom who will fight the world for you, and a big brother who already loves you more than anything." Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was real. And in the grand house that once echoed only with pain, now echoed laughter, lullabies, and late-night feedings. There were family dinners with messy tables, pillow forts in the living room, and long walks through the garden. The house had a heartbeat again. Now, if you've been with us until the end, we want to hear from you. What would you have done in Emily's shoes? Would you have allowed Ben back in, or shut that door like she did? If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and chosen family, drop 100 in the comments to show your support. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We're building a global community of people who believe in stories that heal. Share this video with someone who needs to remember. You don't have to be perfect to be a family. You just have to show up.